Hello and welcome to our series of short recordings addressing the people, process, and technology necessary to implement sustainability reporting. I am Aaron Saw. In this session, we'll talk about identifying the material sustainability related information for reporting, which were covered in stage 3 of the sustainability reporting cycle. We also have guest speakers joining us to help bring these processes to life, and I will introduce them in due course. Sustainability reporting is likely to cover a range of matters, so focus on what is important to your organization. This will include information to support decision-making by senior management and those charged with governance. Also, information to meet mandatory reporting requirements and the information that may be required by primary and other users. In another video, we have talked about establishing the sustainability reporting standard or framework that's applicable to your organization. In the guide and in this series of videos, we'll be using the IFRS Sustainability Disclosure Standards as the baseline. The principle of materiality in IFRS S1 is based on the definition of material in the IFRS accounting standards. That means many professional accountants will be familiar with the concept. Our guide proposes a three-step approach to determine material information for disclosure. A less well-resourced and less complex organization may favor conducting these steps together, as the same people are likely to be responsible for the task. In contrast, larger and more complex organizations may choose to carry out these steps separately and consider them at different levels or geographic locations. Step 1 is about identifying the organization's sustainability-related risks and opportunities, or in this video, I will just say SRROs, as it's quite a mouthful to pronounce the whole phrase. To do this, you may leverage existing risk management or business planning processes, but these processes may need to be enhanced to assess risks and opportunities arising from new objectives or new sustainability-related targets. To use a scenario analysis, taking into account forward-looking information, as well as to conduct product lifecycle assessment. In addition, you should scan the environment and external sources. This includes guidance available in the applicable sustainability reporting standards and frameworks, the reporting by industry peers, the work of other experts, and perhaps news and social media. Then, in step 2, you assess whether the SRROs could affect the organization's prospects. To do this, you evaluate the organization's dependence on resources and relationships along its value chain to generate cash flows and how its activities and outputs affect those resources and the relationships. Then, prioritize the risks and opportunities that could reasonably be expected to affect the organization's prospects. You notice that step 2 is heavily subjective and often require judgment. Therefore, you may want to validate the organization's SRROs with stakeholders. Next, we move to step 3. Here, we determine the material information for reporting. For this, you need to assess the requirements in the standards, the relevance of information to key stakeholders, be it internal or external stakeholders. You need to evaluate both quantitative and qualitative factors, including the nature, magnitude, and likelihood of the effects from the risks or opportunities. You will also need to assess the extent of remediating the risks and the dynamic pace, or sometimes people say how quickly a risk or opportunity can affect the organization's prospects. Organizations that operate in multiple jurisdictions and complying with several reporting frameworks or standards will need to be alert to information that need to be reported using the applicable materiality principle. Last but not least, be aware that SROs may change over time. This is especially when circumstances change or when there is a significant event in the organization or its value chain. Information that was not material in the previous period may become material now. As such, material information for reporting would need to be reassessed. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to turn to my guests to share some insights on this topic. Joining me in this session is Prashani Ilasegaran. She is the Deputy General Manager of Group ESG at Haley's PLC. Welcome, Prashani, and thank you for waiting so patiently.
Thank you, Aaron. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, Prashani. These days, we see organizations often operate across multiple locations and in several industries. So, Prashani, can you share with us a little insight on how would such an organization, such as yours, identify its sustainability-related risks and opportunities?
Okay, great. So let me start by giving you some context into my organization. So I represent Haley's PLC, which is one of Sri Lanka's largest and probably most diversified conglomerate. So we have 12 business sectors in Sri Lanka with operations in Sri Lanka and overseas, over 175 companies and nearly 500 operating locations. So, I mean, you can understand the complexity of non-financial reporting at Haley's. So for us, it has been a journey of continuous evolution. So at the moment, we report on multiple reporting frameworks because we have very diverse stakeholders who want different types of information, right? So just for context, at the moment, we report on GRI, integrated reporting. We report on 8 industry standards of SASB, and we do some initial disclosures on TCFD as well. So we are hoping to voluntarily adopt IFRS S1 and S2 for the next reporting cycle, but we are taking the transitional relief that is allowed and going with the climate first approach because given the complexity of the group, it's a bit challenging to jump in everything together, right? So to answer your question, at Haley's, we take a central to component approach for assessing SRROs. And to be honest, Aaron, this process was really strengthened over the last few months or maybe even last year in anticipation of our adoption of S1 and S2. So how it happens is at sector level, so we have 12 very diverse sectors, like I said, and at each sector, we've now mandated the establishment of an ESG steering committee. And this committee is represented, most of the time is led by the finance director, because we really want people to see that connectivity between the financials and the non-financials. So it's led by the finance director, but is represented by multidisciplinary heads. So we would have sales, we would have HR, we would have marketing, like etc. Right? So at each sector level, the steering committee has been given a standard template. So like I said, again, central to component, where we at the center have identified an exhaustive list of ESG risks. And this template is shared with the sectors who score this risk on a quarterly basis. So we're just starting to get used to this process. So once it is scored and approved by the steering committee, it is then presented to the sector level audit committees, right? And then at a center level, so I sit at the Haley's ESG center team, and I am part of the team responsible for preparing the annual report as well. So then it is consolidated at group level and reported to our group management committee. We also have a group ESG committee as well as the audit committee, right? So I think what we really try to do is number one, bring in the finance professionals into this gamut as well, because I don't think very rightly, like you said, you cannot isolate non-financials anymore. You cannot isolate the sustainability function because risk landscapes have changed, right? And the financial professionals need to be aware of these risks because now it has a direct impact on your performance, your profitability, and the stability of your financials, right? So that is one thing we have tried to do. And the second thing is to really have the board looking at these numbers and looking at these risks. So in addition to the SRROs and the CRROs, which are presented on a quarterly basis, our group management committee, which sits right below the board, as well as the board, look at the non-financial indicators. So this includes GRI numbers, it includes performance against our emission targets. So we have certain companies in the group which have committed to SBTi as well. So these performance against targets are reviewed on a quarterly basis by the Haley's GMC and the board as well. So like I said, it's a journey, and I think we have just started on this journey, but it also requires a mindset shift across the organization, starting from the leadership to the bottom level. So in addition to the technicals and the processes that we are putting in place, we're also trying to drive this culture of, sustainability consciousness in your business, and, trying to really get people to look at things differently and look beyond your typical financial risks. So that has been our experience at Haley's, and yeah, I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Prashani, for giving us an overview of your extensive process, 175 companies and 150 locations across 12 sectors. I can hardly visualize the complexity of the process in place, although you make it sound so simple. And thank you for summarizing it for us. Yeah. So thank you again. I'd just like to say thank you for bringing the process to life with your experience. That was really insightful.
Thank you,
So,
Aaron. Thank you for having me.
ladies and gentlemen, before we end, I'd like to reiterate an important message, that is to focus on providing material information for the intended users. There is no one-size-fits-all model, and so we encourage you to take time to work through the suggested processes of our sustainability reporting cycle, and then design processes that are appropriate to your organization and implement them. I now leave you with 2 actions to watch. Number 1, to watch the other videos, and number 2, to workshop the areas that we have just discussed. Questions are available at the end of this recording, and you can use them for discussion in your organization, or they can be used by educators in their learning program. And with that, I'd like to thank my guests and to you for watching. Goodbye.